Dusty, have you ever gone on a hunting trip?
Well, yeah.
You pack all your stuff. Let's say you're driving to New Hampshire. Let's say I'm driving to Ohio, and you're hunting for 4, 5, 6 days. What's the biggest challenge you usually have?
You're going to stop multiple times to get gas, and I worry about odor the whole way.
It's always in the back of your head. After talking to our friend Tim Gauthier, we realized that there's a better solution that is portable. And that solution is called the ScentLock Enforcer. This nifty little device, about the size of an iPhone, it produces ozone. Ozone is this naturally occurring O3 molecule that actually naturally removes odors, kills bacteria, binds to all kinds of odor particles in the air, and basically makes you scent-free instead of like a scent cover-up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
You can put this in your tote. It operates off of a USB and has an 8-hour battery life.
It's the personal ozone generator.
It is the personal ozone generator. If you want to check it out, go to ScentLockEnforcer.com. That's ScentLock Enforcer.com. Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 170. Dave Priebe and Deer Hunting Basics. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by the ScentLock Enforcer, Morse's Sporting Goods, and the Euro Hanger. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Bob Dumong from the Buckhorn Boat Dog, listening to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Neil Pendleton of Southern New Hampshire, and I killed the 1490 buck. That's 1,490 days of hunting a 192-inch, 22-point, 10.5-year-old buck. You can too if you listen to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Sam Ubel from Whitetail Adrenaline, and I'm pressing play on one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and I am psyched that you're joining us once again to talk deer hunting for the next hour. There's nothing that really gives me as much pleasure as that, man. You know, we made this show just to talk about deer hunting, and gosh darn it, you know, it's working out pretty good. I'm joined by my good friend and co-host from Ohio, Dusty Phillips. What's going on, Dusty?
It's a great day to be alive, Jay.
What is that?
Yeah, I just got home from New Hampshire. When's the show going to air? Saturday?
Saturday, yeah.
Give you some more to edit here.
Yep. Thanks, bud.
Nah, man, this week returning back from New Hampshire, and real fortunate to kill a fall longbeard there. And never did get on a bear, but that's hunting, you know. We tried really hard. We hunted every day, daylight to dark, and you know, we never did get on a bear, but that's okay. I'll be back.
Well, that bear knew you were in town because you kept showing up in my backyard.
That's something.
It is. It's like they knew you were here. Did you ever get your luggage?
Yes, I did get my luggage, and everything that I sent home was still there, so I'm thrilled with that.
Excellent. All right. I know you tested out a little of the sample of the West Hopkinton honey, and actually, at least I think that's what you brought home. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you got the Tupelo we tested?
I got West Hopkinton.
West Hopkinton. All right. Very nice.
I'm going to give a shout out to the West Hopkinton bee herd. My gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's pretty yummy. You know, they always say that if you consume honey that's local to your area, that your allergies will be less because you're taking in all the allergens from around your area. And it's pretty sweet and yummy too, so it's all good. So, one of the things that we have been requested to do on this show or not more, but is to have some kind of a deer hunting basic show. The people that have requested this said that, you know, you guys go pretty deep on a lot of subjects, and you get some really talented deer hunters on your show, but it's a little advanced for the beginner. And I have to agree with them. And we go deep and really touch on some really, really hardcore subjects when it comes to deer hunting and some very specific advanced type course material, I would say. to help out some of the people that have just gotten started deer hunting, we thought we'd break it down and have a guest come on. Actually, in this case, I went to record this guest who was giving a seminar locally at the New Hampshire Fish and Game headquarters, a guy by the name of Dave Priebe. We recorded Dave last year when he did his advanced course called Hunting Dominant Bucks. But the New Hampshire Fish and Game and Dave got together, and they made this course a beginner's course for those that are just starting out. And I don't know if it was aired live on Facebook, and I have edited down the audio that I recorded that night so that we could bring it to you if you are just getting started. If you're a newbie hunter, Dave covers some of the most basic deer hunting items that you're going to want to know. It's advanced from when you took your hunter safety. Dave does reference some of that stuff that goes to hunter safety, but this would be like the next step if you're graduating from hunter safety to the next course and you wanted to get a little more specific, and this one's all about deer hunting. So Deer Hunting Basics with Dave Priebe. Dave is a native of Raymond, New Hampshire. He's a software engineer for a telemarketing company. He's an accomplished carpenter. He's an avid fly fisherman and fly tyer. He does some radio, which is kind of cool. And he's a radio producer and host of the New Hampshire Gospel Radio. He is the bass singer for a group called the Bass Notes. He's a certified beekeeper, speaking of hunting. He is a hunter, and he's been hunting deer for a long time. He's also a pro staffer for Quaker Boy Game Calls. But Dave likes to give back to the community, give back to hunters, and share what he has learned over the years. If you wanted to listen to last year's show called Hunting Dominant Bucks, just go into iTunes or any of the podcast directories and type in Hunting Dominant Bucks, Big Buck Registry, and you'll find it. And you'll hear the advanced course that Dave gives. Before we get to Dave, I'd like to invite you to check out our survey we're doing. We're trying to learn a little bit more about you, who you are. It's a 5-question survey. Dusty, you took it. I took it.
Absolutely.
Pretty simple stuff. And we're just trying to get an idea who listened to the show. So if you could, go to bigbuckregistry.com/survey. And somebody reminded me the other day that we didn't have it on our website. So I'll be putting it up on our website as well. So you'll see the link. It'll just say survey. I also wanted to say thank you to our most recent pledge and patron, and that's Doug Priest. He pledged $10 per month. Thank you so much, Doug. I know you're listening right now, and I know Doug personally. He was my apprentice last year under the Fish and Game program, and now he's got some tree stands set up, got some cameras out. He's ready to rock and roll. I guarantee he's going to shoot his first deer this year, and I was psyched when he asked me to do it. And now Doug has turned around and pledged to this show because he finds value in it. So hopefully you find value in it too. And if you would like to join the pledge campaign, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/donate. So let's get on with the show and start listening to Dave Priebe talk about the basics of deer hunting. But before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the deer news.
The deer news this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. In our first story, North Carolina researchers ask for help in camera trap survey. This article is featured on the BlueRidgeNews.com website. A new research project of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, and North Carolina State University aims to answer a big question. What animals are found in the wildest parts of the state, in backyards, and in suburbs? Scientists are recruiting schools and residents to participate in the North Carolina's Candid Critters, the largest camera trap survey ever, with a goal of 20,000 to 30,000 active sites across the state over the next 3 years. From backyards to North Carolina's wildest places, the images collected by school children and adult volunteers will increase everyone's understanding and enjoyment of the natural world, while at the same time informing future wildlife management decisions. Participants may borrow a camera trap, also known as a trail camera, from a public library to use on approved public lands. Participants who own or purchase a camera trap can add images from their own property to the study. These images will help scientists learn more about deer reproduction and the distribution of all mammal species across the state. One of the main scientific advantages of pictures from camera traps is that they are verifiable, which means that they are evidence that an animal was located in a specific time and place. The photos will allow scientists to map where animals live and when and where they are most active across the state. They can use the data to study how wildlife interacts with the environment, with humans and with other species. To sign up or learn more information on the project, visit www.ncandidcritters.org. DNA testing conducted on cougars killed in the Upper Peninsula. This article was featured on the Michigan DNR's website. Genetic testing on tissue samples from 2 cougars poached in the Upper Peninsula shows the 2 animals likely came from a population found generally in South Dakota, Wyoming, and northwest Nebraska. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, cougars are once the most widely distributed land animal in the Western Hemisphere, but have been eliminated from about 2/3 of their historic range. At one time, cougars lived in every eastern state in a variety of habitats, including coastal marshes, mountains, and forests. They were native to Michigan, but were trapped and hunted from the state around the turn of the 20th century. Since 2008, the DNR has confirmed 35 cougar reports in the Upper Peninsula, but so far there remains no conclusive evidence of a breeding population. No reports have been confirmed from Lower Michigan. Cougars are on the endangered species in Michigan and are protected by law. 4 steps to a perfect hunting social media post. This story was originally featured on the NDA.com website for the National Deer Alliance. 20 years ago, when you took a picture of the deer you killed, recorded your hunt on a VHS tape, or ranted about a hunting issue that bothered you, the only people who ever saw or heard about it were your close friends and family. But thanks to social media, those deer hunting photos, videos, and rants today have the potential to end up in front of millions of strange eyes across the world. Many times those strangers seeing a photo of a dead deer or a video of a hunt are seeing these things from a very different perspective than you or I. And whether we like to think about it or not, this fact of the social media age could have a significant impact on the future of hunting. With this being the case, the responsibility is increasingly being placed on us as individual hunters to be careful about what we're sharing on social media. Here are some things to think about when posting to social media. Number 1, choose a respectful image. Most hunters talk about the respect and admiration they have for the animals they hunt. Choose a picture that tells that story. Number 2, provide context. Maybe share a bit of the story of this hunt and why it was so special to you. Number 3, take an extra second. Before posting on social media, especially related to hunting, it's always good to take 1 extra second to think before hitting publish. And have fun. If it makes you happy and it's legal, ethical, and respectful, go for it and share your joy with the world. Mark Zuckerberg says animals taste better when you've hunted them yourself. This story was originally featured on the Washington Examiner website and was written by Paul Bedard. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg wants people who eat meat to hunt for their own food or at least get familiar with where their dinner lives. The billionaire said that he began hunting 4 or 5 years ago and he prefers to eat what he kills. Half of the joy is things taste better when you make them yourself, and they taste doubly better when you've hunted the animal yourself. Whether you're fishing for salmon or going hunting for a boar, that's a big part of it. You feel more connected to what you're doing, to what you're eating, and you cook it yourself, and it's the whole experience, he said in a 30-minute video interchange with fans. It's a good way to feel connected to nature, he said, adding, I feel like if you're going to eat meat, then you should be a part of getting it. You should get to know where it comes from. On his big green egg were 2 racks of ribs he flavored with Sweet Baby Ray's sauce, and brisket was on the smoker. I'm the meat chef, he said. His hometown of Palo Alto bans wood-burning fireplaces and wood fires in park grills, but not home grills. One viewer apparently thought the grills were on fire, to which Zuckerberg said, It's not a fire, it's smoke. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. If you have any ideas on future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Dave Priebe.
Imagine you take all of the safe, ethical hunters, okay, and you put them on a spectrum. Way over here, on this end of the continuum, you have the same individual who has hunted every season, goes to the same place every year, sits under the same tree every year, never fired around, loves it. He loves it. Great. That's his hunting experience. He's going to continue to do it. Way over on this end of the continuum is the individual who every single day lives, breathes, eats, sleeps, drinks hunting. Well, for tonight, let's say whitetail deer hunting. Okay, so it's a big, broad spectrum of individuals, right? Well, most of us fall somewhere in between. And those of us who knew are going to find their place on that continuum, including myself. We're not all the way to the extreme and on either end. We're somewhere in the middle. And so you will find yourself somewhere on that continuum as you begin your experience hunting and get more seasons under your belt and more experience. Something else that's also worth pointing out is that each of us present a profile when we pursue game in the woods, when we hunt. And it's very important that we influence the non-hunting public in the proper way. If you look at the statistics, 80% of the population does not hunt. 10% does hunt, approximately, and 10% are anti-hunter. So as those of us who are in the hunting community, it's very important that our conduct and our behavior influences the 80% who are kind of indifferent to hunting. We want them to fall out on our side. And so your profile and how the non-hunting public sees you and how they interact with you and how they perceive you is very, very important. Because there's a media-based perception which is unfounded. And so everything we can do for those of us who actually are in the field hunting and fishing, as we conduct ourselves, the more we can present ourselves in a good way to the non-hunting public, the more we're going to influence that 80%. So when votes come up, political decisions are made, those voters will fall out on our behalf. So think about, things that you see that might influence the public in a negative way. There's many examples, and I see them almost daily on automobiles and such. So that's about all I'll really say about that. But I think you get what I'm talking about there. So this is an introductory talk. And these talks came about through some conversations that I had with Mark Beauchesne about having some outreach to the public and having some way to give back to the public here at headquarters. And so through a few inspirations and such and some conversations, we 5 years ago or so, we put together the first talk called Hunting Dominant Bucks. And I gave that talk for 3 years, and Mark said, Dave, we need an intro talk. And so that's how this talk came about. Here's our overview. Here's the things we're going to cover. What is white-tailed deer hunting? And we're going to take a real interesting look at that, I think. How do I learn to hunt deer? Where can I hunt? What tools do I need? What's success? We'll look at a little summary, and then time permitting, we'll take some time. I'll talk about field dressing, which is something that's very important. And I've spent time at the registration station, and I see a lot of white-tailed deer coming in. And boy, there's a big deviation on how white-tailed deer are field dressed. And there's really a simple, straightforward way to process your deer in the field to get it in that I'll explain. So that's our overview. There's a famous German entomologist. His name is Dr. Jürgen Tautz. And Dr. Tautz is also an expert on honeybees. And in Dr. Tautz's text on the biology of a superorganism, he talks about how life forms acquire knowledge. And Dr. Tautz says there's primarily 3 ways. He's approaching it from an evolutionary point of view. Now, I believe there's at least 4 ways that organisms acquire knowledge. It's in your DNA. You got it from mom and dad. They passed it down to you. Now think about that. Think about the natural musician, the natural athlete. Yeah, they had instruction, right? They had experience, but they had it in their DNA. Some people are just natural predators. Communication with others of the same species. That's another way that organisms acquire knowledge, right? And that's what we're doing tonight. We're doing something distinctly human tonight at the level that we can communicate. And then there's experience, which is trial and error. And so really, for the humans, experience and communication, essentially, are the primary ways that we're acquiring knowledge. But all life forms acquire knowledge in those ways. I also believe there's divine impartation of knowledge. We'll save that for another day. So when you think about what the hunt is, what is it? What really is a hunt? Well, there's a very elementary answer to that too, right? If I asked someone who was in grade school, what's a deer hunt? He would say, well, Dave, you take a gun, you go in the woods, and you shoot a deer. And he'd be right, wouldn't he? But it's not quite that simple, right? That's a correct answer, but there's more to it. The hunt is defined, as I define it, is the predator-prey relationship. Do you really think of yourself as a predator? And in the context of the talk tonight, the prey animal would be the white-tailed deer. So when you think about the predator-prey relationship, you think about what the predator brings to the game, if you will, to the match, and what the prey brings to the match. What's the challenge here? Now, humans have superior intellect. We could kill them all. We could kill all of them. We have the technology. And in fact, even before we had all the technology, back at the turn of the century, where there was commercial hunting, the white-tailed deer population in North America was down around 100,000. Now it's in the tens of millions. So we had really, really killed them way, way back. So we have the ability to do that because of our superior intellect. We can study prey animals' biology. We can learn a lot. We can go out and experience them in the field. We can observe them and what they do. And we can make a plan. And we can communicate that plan. The prey species in this, for white-tailed deer, well, what do they bring? What do they bring to it? What makes it a match? Well, they have superior human avoidance behavior. They've been a prey species for a long, long time. And they've learned, if you will, and you wonder how they learn it. We just talked about how organisms acquire information. It's in their DNA. But do you think that they don't communicate? Well, of course they do. We don't understand white-tailed deer communication, but certainly they are experiencing. And there's some level of communication, but it's innate. They have these innate behavioral responses for avoiding predators. And humans, of course, are a prime predator, but there's other predators that they encounter. So their behaviors are such. So that's really the matchup when you think about it. It's our intellect against their behavior. Now, what makes it fair? What makes it fair? Well, our organizations like Fish and Game and our legislation, they make rules that establish fair chase. They make the laws that govern how we pursue them. And that balances it quite a bit. They set the seasons. They describe the methods. That balances it quite a bit. We could still be unethical, but I would encourage you all to, the real satisfaction isn't just harvesting an animal. It's really studying them and really knowing about them. The more you use your intellect to study any creature, the more that you will respect them. And through that respect, the better you will manage them. So that's the matchup. It's our intellect against their behavior. Does that make sense? So, what do we do as humans? Well, we're doing the uniquely human thing here tonight, right? We're having group communication, sharing. And the whole idea behind this in our pursuit of these animals is to develop our white-tailed deer hunting intellect so that we can make a successful hunt plan. Well, how do we do that? Well, we look at their life cycle. We look at their behavioral cycles. We look at their feeding pattern behaviors. We study their biology, both their anatomical biology and their behavioral biologies, and we learn all we can about them. And also, not only do we study them and share, but we also experience scout. And that's one of the key ways, that's one of the primary ways to increase the number of encounters that you will have with white-tailed deer. And the more encounters that you have, the more opportunities you're going to have to harvest one. It's all about encounters. Some days you'll have encounters and you won't have any opportunity to take that animal. But you learn every time you have an encounter. Every time you get to observe them firsthand. So you can see on this slide, we talk about some of the behavior patterns, the feeding, the resting, the watering, the breeding. And then we also talk on this slide a little bit about some of the main aspects of what we look for when we scout. What is the deer sign? Beds, droppings, rubs, scrapes, tracks, trails. And those terms, I know they may be new to some, but we'll describe those in great detail next Wednesday. Behavior that male white-tailed deer have when establishing their breeding domain, getting ready to breed. So, how do you learn? How do you learn to deer hunt? Well, it's really, really good if you have someone who's had a lot of experience that can take you, because experience of others can be communicated and then you can learn. You can experience for yourself, but you probably won't live long enough to get all of the experiences to really build up a good level of expertise. So reading, studying, communicating, and getting your first-hand experiences is how you develop your hunting skill. It's how you learn how to do it. Really, being in the field is really key. Those personal experiences you have really teach you a lot. But you have to know enough about the prey species. You have to know enough about the white-tailed deer so that when you observe things in the field and you see certain behaviors, you'll know what it means. You need a big picture so you can put it all together. And in my own growth, if you will, as a white-tailed deer hunter, when I first started out, I didn't know anything. I was just way over here, just going in the woods, sitting down. I didn't know how to read the sign. I mean, I knew what a track was. I knew what a dropping was. I knew what a rub and a scrape was. I didn't know what it meant, and now I do. There's another aspect here to learning, and this one's really personal, but you do draw on your innate ability. Some people are just natural deer hunters. I have a good friend that I was just talking about a little bit earlier, Dr. Almus Kenner. He has so many encounters. I don't know how he does it. He's learned to know where to set up to encounter deer. But sometimes, even if we hunt a brand new piece of ground that we haven't hunted before, he'll have an encounter and I won't. So why is that? Maybe he smells good or something. When we talk about the white-tailed deer's superb human avoidance behavior, their primary defense is their nose. That's their primary defense. They can see, they can hear, but their nose is their primary defense mechanism. So white-tailed deer hunting is a smell game, and therefore it's a wind game. To learn to hunt, you really have to practice with your firearm or your bow or whatever your method is that you've chosen. You really have to practice it. So I use a term here, and whenever you take on any new endeavor, it's like there's always a new language you got to learn, right? There's always this vernacular that's used amongst the population. So if I use a term that isn't quite clear, please ask. This term here, when I talk about sight picture, and I use that term in other aspects of my life that I developed in my hunting. What's a sight picture? Well, in terms of using a bow, a firearm, that is, you're in position to launch or shoot. And because you've practiced it so many times, that picture, you're going to hit what you're aiming at. It's just a given. And so that's what I mean by developing your sight picture. When you practice and launching arrows, you just get so automatic with it. You don't even have to think about it. It becomes just a completely comfortable thing when you're full draw, ready to launch, target lined up, and that sight picture's right on. But it's the same thing with your firearm. But you really have to practice that. Have a high level of confidence in that. Because when the moment of truth comes around and you have an encounter and you decide you're going to harvest that animal, you want those aspects of it to be well practiced and automatic. Question. Okay, so let's talk about methods. Now, there's a lot of deviations to these very basic methods. We're going to talk about hunting from a stand, still hunting, and we're going to talk about driving deer. Those are the primary methods, but there's derivatives of those methods, and we won't branch off on those tonight. We'll just stick to the primary methods. And I don't know where these terms came from. Why is it that you describe stand hunting as taking a seat and not moving, but still hunting, you're moving? I don't know the origin of those terms, but when you're hunting from a stand, you're not moving. In fact, you're motionless. And the idea is you're set up to ambush. You've done all your homework, you've picked out your spots, you got your portable stump, and you're sitting on it, nice and comfortable, and you're waiting for an encounter, waiting for white-tailed deer to come into view. That, in essence, is stand hunting. Now, you could be in a tree stand, or you could be on a ground stand. Either way, you're still stand hunting. That is my preferred method, and that is the most productive method. It's very, very hard to have encounters with white-tailed deer when you're moving because of their superb predator avoidance behavior. Not impossible, but it takes a great deal of experience and skill to still hunt white-tailed deer, to walk around with your gun and get into a position where you can actually harvest one. It happens, but I call those hunting accidents. You had an accidental encounter and you took the deer. And drives. Drives are a team-driven hunt. So what do we put on this slide for stand hunt? Okay, how do you productively hunt from a stand? There's a lot of different scouting you can do, and there's a lot of different sign you can gather in the field that will indicate to you what white-tailed deer are doing. But if you're really time limited, if you find fresh dropping, the deer are very close. Fresh droppings typically haven't turned real black. They might have a little more green color to them. Not necessarily, but they haven't dried out much at all. And once you've seen a lot of droppings, you'll be able to distinguish fresh from stale. If you find fresh droppings, there's deer close by, and you can pick out a spot to take your stand. That would be called a setup. You can get your setup laid out where you're going to sit, climb, and watch. When you choose your setup, the place you're going to sit, you got to be mindful of the wind, because remember we said their primary defense is their nose. So prevailing wind and cover. And of course, you want to be careful. You want to be as silent as you can going in and coming out. You want to try not to spook them. And you have to have a great deal of patience. I've sat on the tree stand, or on the ground stand, or in the tree, and I've seen the sun hit the very top of the trees, and I've watched it come all the way down the tree, light up the forest floor for the whole day, and then watch it go just the other direction from the same spot all day. It takes a lot of patience to stand hunt, and you have to get your mind into a place where you're completely relaxed and you're completely focused with your senses. You just shut everything else out, and you get your ears on full, and you get your eyes on full, and you're complete alert, but you're really at rest, and you're not reacting quickly to things that happen around you. Noises. You hear something, you always follow up on every noise, even the slightest noise. But you start with your eyes and move very slowly. Never assume that what you heard was, oh, it's just a squirrel or it's just some birds. And I'm sure in your experience, when you have more seasons hunting, you'll make that mistake. We all have said to ourselves, oh, that was that squirrel I saw a little, an hour ago, and it's coming back, and you turn and look, and there's a deer standing there looking at it. And now you're busted. He saw you before you saw him. That's the objective in the still hunting, to see them before they see you. And when they come into view, you think about it. You have a deer come into view. Okay, is there one? Is there more? How many eyes are going to be on me? Can I see their eyes? Because if you can see their eyes, you don't want to move. And the more eyes there are, the more chances you are of being detected. So if you have time and you wait till you can't see their eyes, and then you move, you shoulder your gun, you set up. When you're in your stand, and this is a lesson Dave's learned the hard way. When I'm on the ground, I'll be on my portable stump right there, and I'll be sitting on that boat cushion right there. I'll be able to turn every direction, but I'll also have places to rest my gun, so I'll have a good, solid gun rest. Whenever you can get that advantage, it's a tremendous advantage to have a solid gun rest. You will not miss. If you got a good sight picture and you're resting your gun, you're going to hit them with that first round, and you're going to hit them solid. And I'm sure most of you learned in hunter education what the vitals are in a white-tailed deer, right? Heart, lungs, liver, and you know that area of the animal where you want to be aimed. So I will always set up where I have a good field of view. I'm screened by some shadow if I'm on the ground, by some shaded cover, and I'll have an opportunity to rest my gun. Why do I do that? Because I've missed. I don't practice shooting freehand. When I go to the range and practice, I'm on a rest. Because normally I'm just checking my sight picture and I'm checking my sights. And I really don't have time to do much more shooting than that. So what do I do in the field? I try to replicate that as much as I can. Make sure I have good solid gun rest. I love to sit in blowdowns, especially multi-treed blowdowns. Sit right in the middle of them, and then I've got all that screening cover, and I've got all those rests all around me. That's really what I look for. I've got a few spots that I visit regularly that are blowdown. I have a couple other things on this slide. One of the things Dr. Nordberg says in one of his texts is one of his tips. Good view, no deer. When you're taking your stands, typically you want to be near good screening cover. White-tailed deer, they love thick, heavy cover. So you'll have more encounters if you're near heavier cover, brushier, denser cover. And your stand hunting is great when it's cold, crisp, and still. Still hunting. It's really hard. I've tried it. I've tried it a number of times. I was fortunate to have a group of does that were right across the street from my house, and they were there year after year. And I knew after the first couple of days of firearms that they got spooked up into this little area of woods. And I tried so many times to sneak up on those deer, and I just could not do it. And for me, the issue I had was I couldn't see them when they weren't moving. I'd be looking right through the cover, making my way, going just little tiny increments, 3 or 4 feet, stop. And when I'm stopped, have it such that I can rest the gun either against a tree or on a branch or this. Looking, go a little further, stop, look. And I know the deer are in there. And what happens? There they go. Dave can't see them when they're just standing still and not moving. I just can't pick them out. Some people can, but that's something you could learn. It's something you train yourself to do, to see an eye, to see an ear, to see an antler. I just have real trouble doing that, and I've practiced it and tried it, so I kind of said to myself, well, stick to stand hunting. If you find that you can't sit, and sitting becomes an issue for you, those are some of the skills you're going to have to develop, is how to use terrain to screen you, how to use the wind, and how to use your eyes to see them before they see you. And a lot of that really works best when the weather's bad. Rainy, windy, cold days where the deer are just bedded down and not moving, still hunting. Some people are very, very good at it. And it's something that requires a lot of practice, a lot of experience. In New Hampshire, we can drive deer, and you can have up to 6, I believe, in a hunting party. And so when we talk about stand hunting from a stand, that's real low-profile hunting, right? You've parked somewhere discreetly, you've snuck into the woods, you're sitting down, real low profile. And even still hunting can be very, very low profile. Deer drives, that's high profile hunting. And you get a team of hunters and all their trucks and all the orange on, and you're stomping through, we'd call it sweeping pieces of woods. I've swept up there in East Concord many, many times with the guys that I have hunted with in the past. And so typically how you do it is you put a couple guns at one end of a piece of woods, and you'd send 4 in on the other, and and would just start to move through the cover. And the idea was to spook deer your way. Right? And the rule would be, if you spook one, go after it as fast as you can. Because they'll just, the white-tailed deer, when you spook them, they normally don't go that far. They're conserving their energy, you know. They'll go out of sight and stop and turn and look, see what's the threat, you know. Is it really a threat? And so the idea in the drive hunt is to really spook them. And when they think they're being followed, they'll keep moving. Been on deer drives where the deer just absolutely faked us out. It's amazing how elusive they can be and go by you. And did you see them? No. What happened? They can be very, very elusive, even when they're on the move. You know, if you're going to hunt, if you're going to drive deer, and you're going to hunt deer drives, you want to know the guys that you're hunting with really, really well. Because statistically, if you get shot, it's going to be someone in your team. It's going to be an accidental discharge or something. Someone you know is the higher probability. So don't hunt with folks that you don't think have real strong, safe gun handling practice. So what's the best? Well, I think stand hunting is by far the best, especially when you've done your homework in terms of scouting and you've seen fresh sign, you know the deer in the area, you have some idea where they're feeding, where they're bedding, and you're set up somewhere in between them, and you wait them out. You will eventually see them. I'll tell you a short story. Mid-coast Maine, where Mom and Dad lived, I get to hunt their farm for many, many years, and that's really where I cut my teeth on whitetail deer hunting, and there was so many whitetail deer out there, and I'd have so many encounters, but I had no idea what I was doing. All I'd see was a lot of deer running away with their tails waving by, you know. And over the years, through my study and such, I learned how to approach them, and one of the key things that I learned was there was certain pieces of woods I'd never go in when the wind was wrong. I just wouldn't do it because I know they were going to make me out. They know I was coming before I even got close. They could smell me. And I also learned that you didn't have to go deep to be successful. How did I learn these things? Well, I had a map, and I started doing map-based hunt planning, and I mapped out where all my counters were. I mapped out all the sign. I mapped out where all my counters were. And when I looked at that, it was very clear. You know, it was very clear that if I just stayed up on the edges, my chances are going to be real good. I didn't have to walk in that far. It was easy drag out for me, and I was probably going to have more encounters. One of the last buck that I shot up there, I had 3 days to hunt. I had no time to scout. So there's lots of places for these white-tailed deer to be in any given part of their cycle. Went in on a very familiar overgrown jeep trail. On the first morning in, the weather was really bad. We were going to have an ice storm, and the ice pellets were coming down and running on the leaves and collecting in the middle like little ball bearings, you know. So it was starting to get a little noisy. And on the trail, this deer trail that leads into this green field where I know the deer had been feeding, fresh piles, all different sizes, all different size piles, green, fresh. I just stopped and I left. I left for the day. The weather was going to turn bad, and I left for the day. I said, okay, they're very close. If I set up along that trail that leads to the field, leads between the woods and the field, I'm going to see them. Next day I went in, had a brutal windstorm, brutal, cold, hard wind, and I knew that it's going to be very hard for deer moving. You know, you think about how their defense system is compromised in weather, right? Strong, hard wind and rain and noise and trees clacking together, and a lot of times they get freaked out when you see them in those conditions. They'll just be all nervous and jittery. But I hunted hard in very, very hard conditions. I probably put in, from 6 in the morning till 2, probably about 8 hours in on the stand, and then couldn't take it anymore. Got cold and had to leave. Perhaps some other hunters would go in and might spook the deer my way. That's really what I was banking on in bad condition. And the next day I went in, it was Thanksgiving morning. Cold, clear, crisp Thanksgiving morning. Breath going straight up. The waterfowlers opened up down on 7 Tree right at legal shooting time. I hear them pounding ducks down the river. And then maybe a half hour later, I heard the turkeys all going crazy in this overgrown blueberry barren, cackling and what's going on? And then I could hear something coming. Sitting in a blowdown, the gun up, resting on a branch. Here comes a buck right down the trail. Now, I shot that deer, and that deer that I killed was not the deer that was leaving those droppings, because there was some massive piles there. So what I figured was that this lesser buck had just got driven off, and the dominant deer was still up in that field with the does. It's all guesswork, but that's what it looked like to me, because he was running for his life. So I like stand hunting, but it is a personal choice. And there is some influence on the weather. And I really don't recommend drive hunting. I haven't done deer drives in over 15. It's too high a profile, and I think it leads to some competitive behaviors too that might not be safe. So if you're going to drive hunt, really, really know your team well, and don't get yourself in a compromised position. The peer pressure thing. So where can you hunt? Oh, New Hampshire's great. I have sister-in-law lives in Ohio. You can't hunt anywhere without permission. Parkland you can. Everywhere else, closed. There's no open access. New England is unique in our open access. Most of the rest of the country, you want to hunt somebody's land, you got to pay. You have to get written permission or you have to pay. You can't just go on it. And so that's a tremendous privilege that we have in New England. And it's a privilege that our legislature attempts to maintain through, certain tax laws and such, current use and such. So keep that in mind. It's very important to know the land that you're on and who owns it, and be respectful to the landowner, and develop a relationship with the landowners is very, very important to keep access open, keep the posters down, and that also influences your behavior influences my access, right? Bad behavior influences all in the community when land gets closed. And so it's a wonderful thing that we have that in New England. It's strong in New Hampshire. It's still strong in Maine, but there's a lot of land that continues to be posted up. And it's usually the result of, some high-profile hunting event, Somebody leaves trash, someone parks somewhere they shouldn't have, just simple thing like not asking permission, when that's all landowner requests. But we have a lot of parks, we have a lot of open land, we have a lot of fish and game land, we have the national forests, and most of this information is right on the Fish and Game website. The Fish and Game website has a lot of really, really useful, valuable, practical information. So spend some time and learn it. Got great maps, both for hunting and fishing on it. I was in Pawtuckaway opening day for waterfowl. That would have been yesterday. Yeah, beautiful in there. Didn't kill any ducks, but they were there. Just didn't have any chance to shoot one. Okay, now I'm going to talk about tools. I'm going to talk about what tools you need. So depending on the method that you're going to take, depending on how you want to hunt, you're going to have a shotgun, rifle, you're going to have a bow. There's prescribed methods for legal taking, and you have to use one of the prescribed methods for legal taking. You don't invent one for yourself. And practice. Develop your sight picture. So your firearm, your bow. These are fundamental essentials here. Firearm, your bow, your knife for field dressing, your appropriate clothing. Now I'm going to take a little time and talk about clothing, because I've spent my whole life developing my personal layering system, and I'm so familiar with it that I know from just looking at the weather or looking outside at the thermometer what my start temperatures are going to be, what my end of the day temperature is going to be, how much clothing I'm going to need. And so I know how much to pull on if it's going to be 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 50 degrees. I know how much to pull on so that I'm not carrying too much, but I'm going to be comfortable. Because if you're not comfortable, you're not going to stay in the hunt, especially if you're staying hunting. You're just going to be sitting. So I'll explain to you just in brief what my layering system is. So I'll have my skivvies on and a t-shirt. And then I'll have technical long underwear. So these are polypropylene. I have wool and I have polypropylene. And so I'll have, depending on how cold it's going to be, but I usually always have the polypropylene on first, because that's going to wick away the moisture. And then I might put on a wool layer of long underwear over that. Then I'll have two different layers, or two different types of wool pants. I'll have really thin merino wool pants, or I'll have heavy wool pants. And then I'll have wool bib overalls, which will go on over it all. And then on the top, zip turtleneck so I can vent. And I may, I'll have my tech wick layer, and I may have an extra wool layer, but then I'll have a wool shirt jack. And then I'll have my hunting parka. Now, all the clothing, what's nice about the hunting parka is it's a liner from a waterfowl jacket, one of those 4-in-1 systems. It's short, it's really, really warm, and really quiet. It's really quiet. All the clothing is really, when you turn it, it's not, everything's quiet. Layering system on my head, I'll have a number of different hats, and I'll have a ball cap. And I actually have those things with me, so I can show you. Why? If I'm dragging a deer, I'm stripping down to next to nothing, and I still want to have my orange on, but I don't want to sweat to death. And then I'll have a wool watch cap, which I'll have the hat on, and I'll pull the watch cap on over it, so I can layer in different ways. And normally, when I'm walking in the morning, I won't have my heavy top jacket on. I'll strap it to my pack, and I'll have all my hats and stuff in there too. Walking in the dark, headlamp on. Now, that's just how Dave does it. And you will learn your own layering system the hard way, because you'll learn when you get cold, and you'll learn when I see some people trucking have done it. It's like, oh man, I did not put on enough today. So some people need more, some people need less, and it's a personal thing. But the layers are key. As the day warms up, you can peel down, and it cools down, you can put back on. So when you're approaching your stand, it's important trying not to get sweated up. So, whenever you're going in, usually in the morning you're excited, you're cranked up, you want to get in your stand, and there's this pressure to get in there, but just take your time and go in and try not to get all steamed up before you get into your stand. And of course, the stuff you learn, your survival gear, your basic survival gear would be your compass and a whistle and some water. And of course, I always have my hunting pack with me, and I'll have some other stuff in there, my game call, maybe an extra piece of orange, my mittens. I've gone through all different kinds of things to figure out how to keep your hands warm. If you're a gun hunter and you want to keep your hands warm, mittens. Sorry, mittens. Nothing keeps your hands warm like mittens. Gloves just don't. If you're a bow hunter, that's a whole different thing. You got to kind of have gloves. But for a gun hunter, mittens work great. But you'll find stuff that will work for your personal choices there. I just want to share to give you some reference, frame. What's my take or what's my position on scent control? And all the products that you can get for washing and, clothing, washing your clothing, washing your body. Excellent question. It is a smell game. And so the hunters that are in the extreme of the continuum, they will do everything they possibly can to control their scent. Okay? Now, what would that be? They probably never wash any time of the whole year except with scent odor-killing washes. They have all the odor-killing toothpaste. They kill the odor-killing gum. They use the odor-killing gum. They wash all their clothes in scent-killing, UV-killing wash. And they're constantly combating their own body odor. Their hunting clothes never go inside. Never go inside. If they travel, they're in the back of the pickup. They're not even in the cab. The guy's in the extreme now, But they're looking for every single advantage they can get. And typically, these individuals are hunting the biggest deer. And so they know that these critters did not get really big by not having superb avoidance behavior. So they won't risk anything, especially if they know that massive deer is in there and they want to try to have an encounter with it. Never mind kill it. They just like to see it. Of course, they want to take it. So they'll go extreme. Now, where's Dave on the continuum? I'm not that extreme. But I will have good behavior through the hunting season. Now, what does that mean? My hunting clothes are clean and they're all bagged. They will stay in a building. I'll have them hanging up in the garage. I won't bring them in the house the whole hunting season. They'll be out there hanging up. Soon, I'll start washing with the no-scent soap. And by the way, some of the hunting soaps are really, really nice. I mean, the hunter's specialty stuff with the aloe, man, it's complete body wash. You feel great. The guys in the extreme will never go in the field without taking a shower. Never. Always take a shower. They will always go clean, clean, clean. Footwear. They'll be fanatical about foot odor. Only rubber boots. Never neoprene. Only stuff that will never pick up and hold odor. Stuff that they can absolutely kill all the odor in. I'm not that extreme. They'll sacrifice comfort for odor control because they do firmly believe it gives you an advantage. Does it? Yes. How big an advantage? I don't know. You're still going to deal with the wind, and you're still going to deal with the white-tailed deer's nose. You still are out there breathing. You still have some metabolic activity going on. You're gonna make some gases that are going to be distinctly human, and it doesn't take very many of those molecules to alert mature deer. So my personal take is do everything you can within your own desire to be extreme. So yes, scent control. It's all about scent. So, and I think what I'm doing is very, very reasonable middle ground. It's not that hard to have a separate place to keep your clothes. And it's not that hard to use your body wash and have the discipline to shower every day. And I'll have like a pair of sweats on, and I'll go out in the garage, and I'll have my stuff out there. It's a little chilly, but I'll pull on all my hunting gear out in the garage. And then I won't go in the house. I won't. Now I'm hunting. And when I come back in, take it off. Now, and some guys will also use coveralls. They'll have one system, scent control coverall, and they'll pull it on. My good friend Dr. Kender keeps all of his hunting gear year-round in his barn. There's no automobiles. Is it going to be the same as being in the household, in the dwelling? Probably not. No cooking odors. I said there's lots of different styles of whitetail deer hunting, and there's lots of different texts. You can read lots of good stuff. But Norberg's science, biology-based methodology. Some days you have what I call a fickle wind. If you have 3 days to hunt, you're going to hunt, right? And you can think about your prevailing wind and how it really wants to blow. The chances of deer approaching you from downwind are very slight. So when you pick your setups up, you can choose places to sit where, depending on how the wind's blowing, you don't have to move. Especially if the deer could approach you from a number of different ways. But I've been out on days where the wind just can't make its mind up, and that's enough to drive me crazy. Blowing in this ear, it's blowing in this ear, it's on the back of my neck, it's my face. Oh boy, make up your mind. But some days that's just what the wind does. What's a success? What is a successful hunt? Well, with all your time in the field, with all your endeavors, it's really about the day. When you're a sportsman, is it really that important to harvest a deer? Is that really what it's all about? It's really about the day. It's really about the experience of the day. That's something I learned really, really later in life was how do you enjoy the whole day no matter what happens? So really, any day you get in the field, you don't get that many days in the field. Think about it. Overall. So it's really about the day. And the day gets real good when you have some encounters. When a plan comes together, right? It is really up to you. I prefer the mornings. My good friend Almas prefers the evenings. He loves the evening hunt. I don't want to kill him at last light. I've helped him in the dark many times. He'll call me and say, Dave, need some help. That's the thing. There's two hunts that go on, right? There's your first hunt, and you set up, and you have an encounter, and you pull the trigger. Well, if you didn't make a good launch of your arrow, or you didn't have a good rest, and didn't have a good clean hit with your bullet, now the deer runs off. Now you have a second hunt, right? And you want to have short second hunts. You don't want long second hunts. They're just miserable. It's just no fun wounding an animal, and you really have to learn to pass up shots that aren't good. You have to say to yourself, well, I had an encounter and I got here. I got you. I'm going to let you go today because I just don't have that. I just can't see enough of the vitals, or there's too much cover to shoot through, or that happens a lot the more encounters that you have. So you have to be willing to just pass. Otherwise, you're just going to have long second hunts, and it's just miserable. You feel terrible when you wound them and can't find them, or you find them too late and the dogs got to them and they're spoiled. I learned to field dress watching videos by Larry Metz, LEM Products. Remember that? LEM Products. Larry's a meat cutter in Ohio, and he made a couple DVDs processing white-tailed deer from the field to the table. Outstanding. Wore the videos out. Just wore them out. And I was just shopping for some DVDs because I'm going to be asked what my Christmas list is going to be, and I want to say, I hope Santa brings me some DVDs, because even though I remember a lot of it, I'm sure there's some little details that I'm not practicing in the whole processing, because I process all my own whitetails. And I would encourage you to learn to do it. It's great to cut your own meat and cut it just the way you want it. So satisfying. It's a chore, but it's really, really satisfying. So when you have you had an encounter, you were all set up, your plan came together, you made a quick, clean kill, you launched, you fired, the critter went down, the white-tailed deer is dead. When you approach an animal that you've stabbed or shot, you approach it from the hind end, and you looking at the animal's eyes. Typically, if their eyes are open and it's on its side, it's probably dead. And just tap it. When you do launch, or you do shoot, before we get into the details of white-tailed deer hunting, launch, had a hit, okay, pow. Had a hit? Okay. What am I going to do? Nothing. Deer ran that way. I have a general idea where it went. I remember from my sight picture, I know where I hit it. I'm very confident I had a good, clean hit. What am I going to do? Check my watch. 15 minutes. Now I'm staying right here. You might see more critters. I'll get out my water bottle. I'll get out my coffee. I'll send a few text messages. I'll just wait. If I'm in the tree, I'll climb down and strip off gear to get ready for a second hunt, right? Now I'm not going to be sitting, so I don't want all this heavy gear on that I had on from sitting. So that's why having a really good pack where you can strap stuff to is really, really important. So I can pull off all my heavy, strip down to my light, tie all my gear to my pack, and then go recover my animal. So approach your deer. It's dead. Congratulations. Tag it. So get your tag out. Remember to bring a pen with you. Fill out your tag. What I do is I fold the tag up and I stuff it in the deer's ear, and then I take a cable tie and I zip the ear shut. I've never lost a tag tagging them. Tagging them any other way, I've had to go back in the woods a few times to find the tag. So stick it in the ear with a cable tie, zip, and wrap that ear up, fold the ear up and zip that cable tie. Tag will be in there, solid. Okay, now we're going to field dress. Your knife, field dressing, doesn't need to be any longer than that pen right there. That's it. Little folding or hard knife or fixed knife. That's all the knife you really need. And this is how you hold it. You hold it with your finger on the point and the butt of the knife in the palm of your hand. That's how you'll do the majority of your cutting. And if you've killed a buck, the first thing to do is to grab all of his genitalia and remove it. Cut it off. If you've cleaned the doe, that's not necessary. You don't have to worry about any of the mammaries. You'll just cut through those. You start at the anus, and you take just the point of the knife, just the tip, around, and you'll go all the way around. So you'll make an incision through the skin all the way around, and then your fingers in. And what's nice is I carry a kill bag with me. You want to see my kill bag? A couple nice things about having the portable stump is you can sit anywhere you want, and you have a boat cushion so you can kneel on it. So nice. My brother gives me the Crown Royal bags. They're not mine. That's supposed to be funny. This is my kill bag. What's in it? Some neoprene gloves or some nitro gloves. And I think my son used the, look at that. Blue cable tie. 30-gallon garbage bag. Heart and liver. Gonna go in that bag. Extra string. And then a blood rag. Gotta have a blood rag. You're gonna have to wipe your hands up when you're done. So, and at some point you'll want to just clean your knife up a little bit. So those work great. The old dish towels. So what I'll do is I'll lay out the blood rag, and then whenever I have to set my knife down, I'll set it on the rag so I don't lose it in the leaves. You know, you set it on the deer and it falls off. So because you're gonna have a little amp. You know, you just harvested a deer, you're going to be excited, and there's every reason to be excited, and that's why you hunt. It's an exciting moment when you harvest one of these magnificent creatures. But we're gonna field dress this properly so that we can preserve all this fine meat that we've just taken. So we're cutting around the anus, and we've gone through the skin layer, and then it's a combination of using your knife and your hands. So then you're going to reach in and you're going to feel the connecting tissues around that tube. And then you're going to go in with a little more blade, a little more point and a little more blade, holding it the same way, moving your index finger down the blade of the knife an inch or so. And you're going to cut in a little more, go in with your fingers, a little more. Now you got the pelvis, the cavity, through the pelvis is probably 5 or 6 inches long. So you're not going to get entirely all the way through, but you'll be able to reach in with a couple fingers and you'll see that whole tube is just flopping around in there. Once you reach that point, you've pretty much disconnected all of that part of the digestive system on the back end. So once that's done, now you roll the deer on its back. You usually have to put one leg on your leg. Then you're going to go back and you're going to put your index finger all the way up, just very, very close to the point of your razor sharp knife. And by the way, I have a little folding buck knife. That's all I use it for is hunting. I don't use it for anything else, and I keep it sharp. That's all I use it for. And my buddies' sons who've grown up, I've given them all. It's a great Christmas gift with a little note that says, use this only for your hunting. Don't use it for anything else. Just keep it in your bag and keep it razor sharp. So deer's on its back. First thing we're going to do is we're going to find out where we're going to make our first incision. The mistake most hunters make is they make the incision way too close to the pelvis. So they start cutting the skin very, very close to the pelvic bone. And when they start to cut, that skin just all pulls back. Then it exposes the meat there. And that's really nice cuts of meat. So those hams get all brown and dried out, and you wind up having to cut that off when you're processing. So start your incision, 8 inches or 10 inches up from the pelvis. So you're if you find the deer's belly button, it's kind of hard to do. You could go back from that, 2 or 3 inches towards, aft on that. And then take the point of your knife, pull on the hair, and just nip. Now, your first pass, you're just going to try to go through the skin. And you'll see, just nip, and make a little incision about an inch long, just like that. Very short strokes, just with the very, very tiniest point of the knife. Stick your finger in, and you'll feel the abdominal wall. Continue, nip, pulling the skin up and putting your finger in. You do not want to penetrate the abdominal wall yet, because the stomach is pushing right up against it right there, and you don't want to puncture that, or the odors get a little overwhelming, and plus all those juices flow out, and you don't want that to happen. So nip all the way to through the skin up to the sternum, okay? Then go back to where the first part of your incision was, and now you're going to make the critical cut through the abdominal wall, and it's the same thing with the very point of your knife. Start making very slow incision movements, only about an inch, and you'll see the muscle tissues. You'll see you're going through it. You see going through. Push with your finger. A little more, push with the finger, and your finger pushes through. You didn't go through it with your knife, you went through it with your finger. Now, you can take two fingers from your other hand and put them in that opening and roll it over like this, right? So you have 2 fingers side by side, and then you can take the point of the knife and lay it like this. So you're holding the tissues down with the 2 fingers from one hand, and you're using the blade of the knife in the other hand, and then you can just make one smooth incision all the way up through the abdominal muscles. And you don't, the point and the blade of the knife never have an opportunity to touch those tissues. Can you see how that would work? So now you have an incision through the abdominal cavity. You can always make it a little bigger if you need to. Typically, the incisions that are made field dressing are way bigger than they need to be. My son-in-law is a surgeon, so he's an OBGYN gynecologist, so we've discussed making incisions. He's like, yeah, you can make incisions too big sometimes. So now your next cut is you're going to reach in with your hand. Now, point of order with this is, normally when I've killed a deer, I'll look it over before I make any cuts. I'll flip it side to side because I want to see the entrance wound, I want to see the exit wound, and I want to see if it had any other wounds on it, so any old wounds. So whenever you're reaching into it, it could be, although the chances are very small, there could be a broadhead in there or something. Unlikely, but it's always good to look the critter over entirely before you start your field dressing. So now you're going to go in with one hand without the knife, and you're going to feel the diaphragm. The diaphragm is that muscle that separates the heart and lungs from the digestive system. And you'll feel it. It's just a membrane that'll be up against the rib cage. Then you're going to go in holding the knife the same way with the point of the blade on your index finger. Reach in with your left hand, hold the tissues down with your left hand, slide the knife in along your left hand so you're not going to touch any tissues, and then cut the diaphragm. Usually there's a release of air if you haven't shot it through the lungs. Now you reach up in as far as you can and you'll find the esophagus. My son shot his first deer last year, and he called me. He doesn't live very far away. He's like, "Dad, I got one down. I don't know what to do." So I went over and I was taking him through this whole procedure, and I'm like, "I'll reach up in there and feel that esophagus." He's like, "I don't feel it." "You're not in far enough." So I reached right in and I've got the deer by the throat on the inside, and I'm shaking its head. "See, it's way up here." Reach way in. So then he's like, "Can you feel it?" "Yeah, that's it." "Okay, now go in." You've got it with your right hand, but you're right-handed, so you're going to make your cuts with your right hand. Now go in with your left hand and grab it. And then come in with your right hand with a knife and cut it off. Now you've made the most difficult cuts. That's probably the most difficult one, is getting it way up in. And now you can start to roll tissues out of the body cavity. You can start rolling the viscera out. And what you're doing is any connecting tissues, if you can tear them. If you can't, very carefully cut them and roll all the tissue out. Reach in and pull the plumbing into the body cavity and out. And you'll roll all the internal organs out into a pile. And you will have to make some other little cuts to get it to come out, but it will all roll out. Now, in that pile is going to be your heart and your liver, and you'll want to take that home. So you'll want to inspect the liver and look it all over. And the heart, same thing. The heart will be in a sack, and you'll just remove that and put the heart in your plastic bag, and that gets carried separately when you drag the deer out. So now you've made the smallest amount of incisions, and that will protect the meat from any debris when you drag the deer out. And so that's how you field dress. And then you'll want to get it home, and you'll want to cool it as quickly as possible. When you hang your deer up, and you don't have to hang it for many days. In fact, when you're processing your white-tailed deer, the thing that tastes bad on a white-tailed deer is the fat and the bone. So you want to get all that out. And when you cook it, you want to put in good fat, good-tasting fat. So you want to be just absolutely maniacal when you're trimming. And when you hire someone to do it, normally they won't be. Not as much as you will be. You will trim it really, really tightly. It's a lot of effort, but I mean, when you actually go to prepare it for the table, you'll find it's vastly superior to if you've trimmed out all that fat and you've done all complete fat and bone out process. So your quick, clean kill, your accurate field dressing without exposing a lot of the tissues to being dragged for dragging your deer in, and then hanging it by the hind legs so that the blood runs towards the head. The lesser cuts of meats are up in the neck and the shoulder, and your best cuts of meat are in the hind, or in your hams and your loins and your tenderloin. Those are the nicest cuts of meat. So you want to hang it from the hind legs, and you can get yourself a gambrel. You can hang them right in the connecting tissue on there. And so I'll hang them in the garage, and I'll just put the head in the bucket because it will bleed. And I will, for the deer that I shoot, I'll hang it overnight, and then immediately about processing it the next day, I'll immediately start processing it. But we won't get into all the other. But I will share with you a quick recipe, and this will get you. So with all your game, game tends to be rather lean, and so it's very easy to overcook it. And when you overcook it, then it gets chewy because it really has no fat. It's not marbled meat. So with your game, you want to cook it just to doneness, and with venison chops or venison steaks, you can cook it rare, and it's superb. So a recipe that my wife and I really like is you take your saute pan, heat it, olive oil, a few slices of garlic, so you season the oil a little bit, and I'll take some of the chops that I've cut. I like to cut them about an inch thick. The loin on a white-tailed deer is only about that big, so they're small little chops, and those will be peppered and lightly salted. Get the pan very, very hot, and then you pan sear. You're only going to cook these things 2 minutes, maybe 3. Very hot pan. Sear one side, sizzling hot searing. So you turn it over, it's all caramelized and nice and brown, Sear the other side, really, really hot. And then take your chops out, reserve them, and then a little red wine, deglaze the pan, and plate, and pour that over. Serve with your favorite sides. Oh, crazy good. I found that trying to cook game on the gas grill just doesn't work. I still haven't figured out how to do it. There's no fat in it. So I found that for the venison cooking on the stovetop really works best for I typically am not big on organ meat, but I have some friends, and certainly if your landowners like it or whatever, make sure they get it. I'm not a big fan of it. When you field dress, the tenderloins are on the inside of the body cavity along the spine, and they go right back to the pelvis. And there'll be a lot of, normally there's big globs of fat on those, and you don't want to disturb that. Leave all that on there, because those tenderloins are some of your really nice cuts of meat in there, and that fat that's on them will protect them from the air. So don't wash the body cavity out with water. Just gray stain the whole thing, and it won't look right. It'll still eat good. So if you happen to shoot a deer badly, and where you've damaged the digestive system, and your field dressing is going to be very messy. It's not going to smell good, and what you want to do is just wipe the body cavity out when you get home with some old rags. That's best. Paper towels won't. Some clean old rags, just wipe it out. Don't attempt to wash it out. I've done it. Bad idea. Bad. Don't do that. Still tastes good, but like I said, you'll stain it. And further, where I'm cutting my own deer up too, I typically don't eat the ribs, because they really have been exposed to the most air and bacteria and such until I go to process. So, but that's just my style. Is it true that even when it's cold out, that bacteria could grow? It's less likely the colder it is, right? But yeah, it's still true, because they'll stay warm for quite a while. Once you've got them hanging up by their legs, you can put a piece of wood or something into your field dress incision to let the heat out from the inside of that body cavity. You can do that or not. I typically don't, because it will cool down overnight, but it doesn't hurt to open it up a little bit. How do I drag them out? I was calling my son for a while when he was living at home. That's a real good question. How do you drag them out? There's lots of aids for dragging them out. I just have this little 3/4 inch strap in my kill bag, and you can just tie the strap around their front legs and the head and make a big loop, drag it. A lot of times I don't bother. I will always have a thin pair of leather gloves in my pack, so I'm not dragging out with my hunting gloves. My hunting gloves I'll have gloves just for dragging deer, and I'll typically just grab them by the front legs and drag them out. But you set up all your gear, right? So you'll have all your heavy clothes stuff tied to your pack. And you've unloaded your firearm and done all that. And then move your gear, drag the deer. Move your gear, drag the deer. Move your gear. Yeah. I'm dragging them head first, yeah. I'm dragging them head first. And that's typical. They make these really cool straps that are really wide and have another handholds. So if you're hunting a party and you have 2 or 3 men with you, everybody can get a good grab on the strap. And that makes it really easy. You get three people on that big wide strap that you can buy for dragging them out. Once again, that's kind of a personal thing too, so how you get them out. I'll usually drag them close enough so I can go get them with an ATV. But I'm not hunting very deep, so I don't really have to drag them very far to get them to the road. I'm usually within 200-300 yards from travel ways. I say that in a very general way, but I don't hunt deep. And it doesn't mean the deer aren't in there deep. No, I normally don't. What's my preferred caliber for my rifle? Well, they all work. There's certain calibers you can't use. I don't think you can't use any .22 rimfire, I believe. Check me in all the regulation books. I'm not a CO, but I don't believe you can use any rimfire for. I have a .30 caliber rifle that I bought when I was 17 years old. I have a Browning lever action, and that's the .308 cartridge, right? That's the NATO cartridge, so very, very effective. Shot a lot of deer with it, but I've killed just as many with my shotgun, with my 12 gauge shotgun. Shotgun's devastating, especially with the rifle barrels. In some areas, you can only shoot shotgun. So if you're going to hunt New Hampshire and southern New Hampshire, you really need a rifle and a shotgun, because a lot of your hunting is going to be shotgun. And if you want to improve your accuracy with your shotgun, you buy a rifle slug barrel with it. Buy a rifle barrel and shoot sabots, right? If you're shooting a smoothbore barrel, then you need rifled slugs to get some good accuracy. But practice with all of it. So it's not really a favorite. It's just, in fact, I didn't even buy the gun when I was, 16 years old. I said to my dad, who didn't hunt, I wanted a I wanted to hunt deer, and I wanted to get a rifle. And he came home with a Browning lever action because he had a good friend who was an expert in firearms and told my dad what to buy. And he said, "You owe me $200. That's what I paid for that Belgian-made Browning in 1973. So, when I was living in Ospey, New Hampshire. So that's a personal choice too. That's one thing about firearms. They all work, and they all do the same thing. So it doesn't matter what you call it or what it looks like. They all work. When I go out, do I use different kinds of calls? I will have them with me. I will have game calls with me every single time. And I will have a grunt tube very close where I can reach it, but I rarely use them. Why do I have it close? In case I want to try to stop a deer. But I've learned I could just use my voice. Because I got a low voice, but I have them with me. Now, that's kind of a style thing too. I mean, there's times when deer will be very, very vulnerable to rattling. This is a rattle bag. There's times when does will be very sensitive to doe bleats, and they'll come in for a look. And there's times during the breeding period where bucks will respond to grunting, and combinations of rattling and grunting. But my style is to not let them have any sense of me at all. I try to go as low profile on the deer as possible. I don't want them to see me, smell me. I don't want them to hear anything that's not familiar. So normally I don't do any calling. Have I? Yes, but I prefer not to, especially if I know they're in there. If I've found evidence that the deer are in this area, this good fresh sign, I'll wait them out. Get the wind in my favor and wait them out. But I'll have the stuff with me. But with any of your calls, it can work two ways, right? It can work for you. It can work against you. So you really have to spend a lot of time practicing with it and know when the timing is right to use them. On buck lure, the same thing with the lures is the doe in heat, the doe pea. Yeah, there's times when that will be extremely effective. But once again, it's something else to carry with. It's something else to set up. It's something else to deal with. And normally I'll have it, but I rarely deploy it. I bank on fresh sign. I bank on my scouting, and I bank on sign. And so I'm not really trying to call them in. I'm waiting for them to come. They work. That's Dave's style. I don't want it to backfire on me, So how many deer have I taken? Oh, I have a big ball of tags. I save all the tags. I don't know, a lot. I'm reluctant to give numbers. I don't even know. I'd have to count them up, but yeah, I don't want it to be a competition either, So I've been doing it a long time. I have a lot of tags. It's one thing I've done. I don't know if any other people in the room save the tags, but I have them all hanging up in my utility room on a cord, and there's a big pile of them up in there. Every time I get another one, I just hook it on and leave them up in there. I suggest you do that. I've seen some really neat displays. In fact, I have most of my old hunting license too. I have my hunting license from 1973. It was the first hunting license I bought, and I think I paid like $16. So, but I've seen them put into like displays and such, the tags and the hunting licenses, and so maybe someday I'll do a little artwork with them from my man cave. How many years experience till I started having success? I had success early on, started hunting really, really intensely in 85, and but I didn't really understand what I was doing. I didn't really get a full picture of what the hunt was all about till I studied Dr. Nordberg's materials. And then, the combination of having studied some remarkable literature and written in a really, really awesome way, great delivery of the material too. It explained so many things to me that I had seen and didn't understand. And so I really got a full sight picture of the whole hunt, if you will, the whole hunt. And so I learned from that how to increase my success just by taking a few key things, which I shared with you. Fresh droppings. You find fresh piles. Those deer are close, and there's a chance that they're not very far away. So I use that as my shortcut if I don't have time to scout. But plus I've been hunting the same pieces of ground year over year, and then you learn some of their patterns. You think about how the hunt progresses in every state. It typically starts with archery and then moves into muzzleloader or firearms, or the firearms may swap either way. It may be regular firearms and muzzleloader at the end, but once you go from the archery season, which is typically all stand hunting, there are some that will still hunt, but most archers will stand hunt. It's a very low profile, very low pressure hunt. It's really based on the white-tailed deer being in their patterns, their normal daily feeding, sleeping, watering patterns. And so you can use that information as an advantage during the archery season. But once you get into regular firearms, now you have a lot of people that are just higher profile, that are just out taking their gun for a walk, and then that really displaces a whole bunch of deer, and now they abandon their range, and the hunt becomes into a complete crapshoot. So your planned success are best early on in your bow and your muzzleloader, because once muzzleloader's gone on for a number of days, and once you hit regular firearms, the profile of the hunt goes way up. There's so many people walking around that the deer are all just spooked, and they're all driven into strange little pieces of their range where they feel safe, and unless they get pushed out of there, your chances of encounter just become really accidental at that point. And it also happens to coincide with the primary breeding activity, which kind of makes it all just a crapshoot. It's just put your time in. So I learned from experience in my local area where the deer normally were when the pressure was off, where they would be, and that increased my success. But then I also learned where they would be once the profile of the hunt went way up and into regular firearms. I can tell you exactly where they're going to be 5 days into the firearm hunt near my house. You can't pull the trigger down there because of the roadways and the houses, but you can go down there and spook them all out. I go down there to see 6, 8, 10 deer, and I don't even bother with them. It's just not not safe to hunt them, and I don't even want to chase them out of there. They'll be there for me next year. Been a great audience. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thanks to Dave Priebe for bringing us the deer hunting basics. It was a show that was long overdue, and hopefully if you're a newbie hunter, you're listening to this show, and hopefully you got a lot of tips from Dave. And certainly, now that you've taken that course with us, you can go back and listen to our entire back catalog and get all the advanced courses that you want, including Dave's that he did at this time last year for us, called Hunting Dominant Bucks. Absolutely great show, and it was based off of the studies of Dr. Ken Nordberg, who we've also had on the show. Dave got me all excited about Dr. Ken Nordberg, and I went out and bought a few of his early almanacs, and I said, well, why not just get the man himself, Dr. Ken Nordberg, on the show? And that's what we did. So we've had Ken on the show before. So that was a great show, and I think that was a much-needed show, Dusty. And I'd like to see if you have something to add to that. Perhaps you have a Chubby Tines tip of the week.
I do have a Chubby Tines tip of the week.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Chubby Tines tip of the week is going to talk a little bit about the pre-rut that's getting ready to come in to play in the whitetail woods here in the next few weeks. We get into, I always say, like around the October 25th through the Halloween, that you're going to see a little pre-rut activity. And what we see here in Ohio is that these bucks are going to start gorging on food. And, a food source is going to be a huge focal point for myself and a lot of other hunters that have been out there and witnessed the pre-rut activities. They're going to start really trying to pack on as many pounds as they can before this rut kicks off. Because we all know once the rut hits, it's nonstop on the run for, a solid month. And they try to really pack on as much nutrition as they can because they're going to deplete all their resources as far as nutritional as they start in the rut and chasing does. And it takes a really, really hard toll on their body once the rut kicks in. But also, you got to remember with the rut kicking off that these bucks are going to run the does. And it seems like daybreak, it starts out in the woods, and then they lead out to some kind of either a CRP or a cut cornfield, somewhere that they can keep a good visual on the doe. They can keep a good visual out for predators or hunters. So they go to them. A lot of times they go to them open fields, and that's going to be a huge focal point for myself to get to the fields and hunt the skirtings of cut cornfields or a thicket where the deer are going to naturally push out so that they can keep an eye on their does and they can keep the predators and the hunters in a visual sighting of anything that could bother them. They're going to want to get out in them fields, and it gives them more room to run, chase the doe, wear her down, get her where she's kind of wore out, where they can, put the fancy on her. So I started focusing on tree stand placements along my field edges, and if you got everything set up just right, I tell you, the rut can be really fun. But it's so unpredictable once the rut kicks in what the deer movement's going to be, and you're going to see a lot of chasing, a lot of buck activity, cruising around trying to find a scent trail, maybe on a hot doe. But with any luck, you'd be out there in the woods, and old Mr. Big Boy run right under you.
Awesome tip, man. I did notice that when you were here and as I was out doing some last-minute scouting for a bear place for us to hunt or for you to hunt, I actually came across my first scrapes that I had seen all season. And, in fact, in pretty much every place we went, we finally saw some activity where the pre-rut is kicking in. In fact, I found a pretty good scrape behind my house today, so I was pretty excited that that's coming. So yeah, that's a very good tip and very appropriate for this time of year. Thank you to ScentLock Enforcer for sponsoring the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. Also want to say thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week, and thank you to the Euro Hanger for sponsoring the show as well. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here on the mic with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. I'll try to get back to every email I receive from everybody, and I'll try my best to answer it. If I can't answer it, I usually have the resources or connection to be able to answer your questions. It's sometimes they're difficult, and it takes me a day or two, but I try my dangest to get back with you with a direct answer, or something that's true and something that you can work off of. You can also look me up on Facebook, facebook.com/ChubbyTinesOutdoors, or shoot me a follow on Instagram @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
A couple of places where you can reach me. You can email me. That's probably the best place to start. It's jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can always give us a call at 724-613-2825 and leave a message. If you'd like to just check us out in general, we are all over social media. And you can check out our flagship Facebook page where we have almost 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans listening to the show and checking out all the big bucks that are being sent in from all of our patrons across the country. You can go to bigbuckregistry.com/Facebook. Likewise, we have Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts, twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. Instagram is instagram.com/bigbuckregistry. We're on YouTube, where you can get actually a video of the audio of the show every week now, and that's bigbuckregistry.com/YouTube. You can find us on Google+. If you would like to send in a buck to be featured on our Facebook page, all you have to go is bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck. And once again, if you'd like to become a patron and join the crowd over there that's donating to the Big Buck Registry cause because they love listening to this show, you can go to bigbuckregistry.com/donate. And finally, if you'd like to listen to the show on other places other than iTunes, and if you are on iTunes, please leave us a review and hit the subscribe button. Helps us in the rankings. Not that we care a lot about rankings, but if you'd like to subscribe, please do so. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Google Play. So those are the big 4 or 5. We go everywhere podcasts go. So you'll be able to find us anywhere like that. It's been a fantastic show. Thanks for joining me again for an hour and hanging out and talking deer hunting, listening to our guests, and we'll have to do it again next week.
Absolutely, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
I'm Jay Scott.
And this is another great episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.